The first time I slept with my boss, it felt like a typo in my life I could fix later. The 200th time felt like a habit, and habits are harder to edit. If you're here for a villain, I'm probably it. If you're here for a lesson, I learned mine the slow, humiliating way. Starting the night, my fiancé folded our sheets into tight squares, set his key on the counter, and told me without yelling, "I'm not living in a house where I'm the only one who keeps promises." He didn't slam the door. He took our dog to his sister's because he said he didn't want to argue over visitation while he was still shaking. He left the coffee grinder he bought because he said I should keep the things that make mornings possible. He also left a printed stack of rideshare receipts, hotel folios, and calendar screenshots on the island, weighed down by the salt shaker like he thought I might try to blow them away. I stared at the top page. The Marriott Bonvoy logo, the dates circled in highlighter, the rate code that had saved us $30 on a night I spent in a room with a man who signs my performance reviews. I thought about telling Liam, fiancé former, that the rate code was for all employees, that the hotel was near a client, that the room block was standard. I thought about saying, "It wasn't what it looks like," which would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic, because it was exactly what it looked like. The receipts don't lie. The keycard logs don't lie. The calendar nicknames don't lie. The part that's tricky about a long affair is you have to build a system, and systems leave trails. I met Mark 4 years ago when I moved from content to strategy at the agency. He runs the West accounts. Healthcare, fintech, the kind of clients that have to sound boring so people think they're safe. He was 47 then, married 20 years, 2 kids. One in college, one still at home. He wore his wedding ring like it was a part of his hand and told stories about his wife's stubborn hydrangeas. He was the kind of leader who makes people believe they're better than they are, and then gives them the room to catch up to the belief. When he said, "You're sharp," I felt like a knife that hadn't known it could cut. The first time we were in Phoenix for a pitch. The heat hit like a fact. We worked until the hotel bar turned their lights up to chase us out. In the elevator, I said something about how the client's CMO loved the phrase, "move the needle," so much he should marry it, and Mark laughed the laugh that sounds like you've surprised him. In a good way. I wanted to surprise someone in a good way. We kissed in the hallway where the carpet pattern is supposed to hide stains. We didn't talk about his wife. We didn't talk about my boyfriend then, who would become my fiancé, now former. We talked about chemistry like teenagers who don't yet know how ordinary it is to ruin a life for 3 minutes of feeling seen. Here's the boring, ugly truth. We scheduled it. I created a second calendar in Google called Pilates because I thought I was clever. We used the Marriott app because it let you check in without going to the desk. We used the agency's travel portal because it was cheaper, which now makes me laugh because I saved $40 a night while putting a price on my integrity I can't get back. We didn't do anything that would get me promoted, which I tell you so you understand this wasn't some calculation for advancement. I didn't get a raise faster than my peers. He didn't slip me projects I couldn't win on merit. He was careful about that because he's not stupid. What he gave me was attention wrapped in authority, and that is a drug that doesn't look like one until you try to quit. At work, we were professional in the way people are when they have to perform clean in front of a mirror. Slack messages stayed about clients. Emails read like templates. The only thing that gave us away was our invisibility on certain Friday afternoons, and my sudden interest in site checks, at hotels we never actually booked events at. HR would later tell me that our company policy prohibits intimate relationships in a reporting chain, unless they're disclosed and a mitigation plan is approved. Someone moves teams, someone else reviews compensation and performance. We disclosed nothing. We signed the annual code of conduct, training like everyone else, and lied to it. At the time, I told myself we were 2 consenting adults and consent cancels context. That's not how power works. Consent is necessary. It doesn't make imbalance disappear. Liam proposed to me in the kitchen with a ring he saved up for by tutoring on weekends. He's a physician assistant. He has a way with veins and apologies. He didn't do anything grand. He made me dinner. Cacio e pepe that clumped because he overcooked the pasta and undercooked his courage. And he said, "I want to do the boring parts with you forever." And I cried because who wouldn't want a promise like that? I said yes. I meant it. The next week, I slept with my boss twice because I was anxious and because anxiety is an excellent liar. It said, one thing has nothing to do with the other. It said, you can love 2 things if you keep them in separate boxes. It said, you're in control. The 200 number isn't a brag, it's a math problem. For years, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, with dry spells when one of us was actually being a person at home and sprints when a project gave us cover. I kept track without meaning to. Marriott's and Hyatt's give you points. Points give you status. Status gives you late checkout and bottled water. We were loyal to one chain because loyalty programs make sinners feel like planners. The first time Liam noticed my points total, he joked that I should plan a girl's trip and I said, maybe, like I planned anything. How he found out. It wasn't a dramatic text from a scorned wife, that comes later. It wasn't a lipstick on a collar, because who wears white collars in 2025? It was his own job. He handles scheduling at the clinic, which means he lives in Outlook land. He knows calendars like carpenters know studs. One night, he borrowed my laptop because his was updating. He typed Sunset Shuttle into my Gmail search bar because that's the rideshare they use with older patients. He misspelled it. Typed Sussex Shuttle. And Google, helpful as ever, returned "Did you mean?" and a spread of every receipt I'd ever forwarded to my personal email, so I could reconcile expenses. He clicked the first one. Then the second. He stopped after 10 because sometimes you don't need the whole story to understand the plot. He waited 2 days before confronting me, which I've decided is the cruelest kindness he could have offered. He checked the keycard logs we get monthly in a security digest, because our office is in a building that cares about audit trails. He cross-referenced with my Pilates calendar, which I'd set to private and thought was invisible. Pro tip, it's invisible until it isn't. He printed the receipts because he wanted the texture of paper to keep him from thinking it was a dream. Then he put his key on the counter like a full stop. I told him, I can explain, which is a sentence only cowards love. He said, explain to your HR, and left. I didn't sleep. I wrote an email to Mark at 3:17 a.m. with the subject line, we need to talk. He replied in the morning, not over email. He said a meeting in a conference room with no windows. He said we should get ahead of this because the optics will be awful. He said we should align our stories. 2 consenting adults, no coercion, no impact on my career, no promises made or implied. The way he said coercion made the word feel like a prop. I heard myself agreeing because survival is a reflex, and I still thought I could salvage at least one of the 3 lives I'd been juggling. I went to HR because it's better when they hear it from you. Sloan, a different Sloan than an earlier chapter of my life, different company, same sensible flats, listened without blinking. She asked the questions they have to ask. Did he ever threaten or imply negative consequences for saying no? Did your compensation or promotions depend on this relationship? Did you feel pressured? I told the truth, no. No. I started it. She nodded. Consent is important, she said. But we also have to consider power dynamics and policy. Our policy doesn't criminalize relationships between employees, but it bans relationships where one person has direct or indirect authority over the other unless disclosed and mitigated. It says failure to disclose can result in discipline up to termination. She scheduled a call with an outside investigator because that's what you do when the chain of command is involved. She placed Mark on leave that day. I got to keep working while they investigated because HR likes to look like they aren't punishing anyone until they have to. Mark texted me from his personal phone that night, we'll get through this. His wife texted me the next morning from a number I didn't know, attaching screenshots of hotel bookings that matched my receipts and wrote, get through this? With whose marriage? I didn't reply because what is there to say to a woman who has just realized her life has been a set she didn't know she was on? She messaged Liam on Instagram too, a polite, furious paragraph about professional boundaries and respect. She wasn't cruel. Cruelty would have let me hate her. She was precise, which made me hate myself instead. The investigator interviewed me like I was a witness to a crime I committed. She asked for emails, texts, Slack DMs. There weren't many because we were careful, but there were enough. She asked to image my work laptop, which is normal. She asked to image my phone, which is optional. I declined because I still have a spine even if it was borrowing confidence from denial. She said that was my right. She said she could request work-related messages on personal devices if they existed and were relevant. She asked me to sign a statement summarizing our relationship timeline. I wrote the truth and hated every sentence. It read like a ledger entries in a book that had finally decided to balance itself. 2 weeks into the investigation, the company offered me a separation option. In at-will states, they don't need a reason to fire you, but companies with lawyers like to wrap endings in agreements. A small severance, continuation of health insurance for a bit, a neutral reference, and a non-disparagement clause that basically says, you don't badmouth us and we won't badmouth you. There was also a line about not suing them. I took the packet home and set it next to the stack Liam left. As if all my papers could argue with each other and arrive at a compromise. I asked for 2 days to decide. I called a lawyer because the internet told me to. She told me the offer was standard. She reminded me that if I refused, I could be terminated without severance and would still likely have a hard time finding work in the same circle. She said if I felt in any way that my consent was compromised, that's a different conversation. I told her it wasn't. She said, then your leverage is low but not zero. You can ask for a letter that confirms your role and dates and a statement that you're eligible for rehire. We negotiated for eligible for rehire. They declined that language and offered no comment beyond confirming dates and title. I signed. I cried. I returned my laptop. I kept my highlighters because I bought them with my own money, and I needed to hold on to something that wasn't paid for by shame. Liam didn't answer my texts. I called his sister to ask about the dog and she said he needs time, which is a sentence that can mean a week or forever. I drafted an apology and sent it to him in a plain email with no please attached. You did nothing to deserve any of this. I betrayed you. I'm ending the relationship with Mark. I'm leaving the company. I'm sorry is too small, but I'm saying it anyway. He replied, thank you for the clarity. He didn't ask for the ring back. I put it in its box and set it in a drawer, because there's no tasteful way to pawn poor judgment. Mark tried to convince me he'd leave his wife. He said the kids were older. He said the marriage had been over for years. Affairs are fueled by sentences like that. They turn off the smoke alarm, so you don't have to evacuate. I told him if he leaves, it cannot be for me. It had to be because he was willing to write his own name on the decision. He said he understood. 2 days later, his wife emailed Sloan screenshots of a text from Mark to me in which he wrote, I'll fix it. The investigator requested an addendum meeting. Fix it reads like leverage, which reads like retaliation. And even though there wasn't any, perception is its own problem in workplaces terrified of lawsuits. Sloan called me after the call and said the company had decided to terminate Mark for cause. Failure to disclose a prohibited relationship, breach of policy, risk to the company. We're not making a statement, she said. We hope you don't either. I said I had signed a non-disparagement, and I meant it. I did not tell her that silence isn't the same as absolution. My mother asked me if I was safe, which made me laugh because the only violence here was the slow kind. She asked me if I had a plan. I said find a job and a therapist in that order. She offered to let me move into my old room. I told her I couldn't return to a place where my teenage mistakes still hang in the air like perfume. She wired me $1,000 anyway, and told me not to waste it on pride. I made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in compulsive relationship patterns, which is a nice way of saying, why do you only feel alive when you're burning something? She asked me when I felt the most fully myself. I said, when someone powerful told me I was special. She didn't flinch. She asked me if being special has ever lasted. I said no. She said, then maybe aim for being honest instead. I said I didn't know who that person is. She said we'll meet her. Mark's wife filed for legal separation first, then divorce. I know because a friend of a friend sent me the docket number like my life is a show she's hate watching. I don't owe you the details of their paperwork. I will say this, she stopped texting me. She blocked me on everything. I understood. The last time we spoke, she asked me one question I still carry. Can you name 3 moments you said no? I couldn't. Not because there weren't opportunities, but because the oxygen you breathe in a secret is flavored with maybe someday, and it makes you stupid. Finding a job after you've signed a separation agreement for violating policy is like dating with a misdemeanor. You don't lead with it, but it shapes the room. I networked like a person whose rent depended on it because it did. I told people I left during a reorg because that sounded boring and boring is safe. I got a contractor role with a boutique firm that pays less and expects more. It felt like penance. It also felt like a chance to be the kind of person who shows up at 9 a.m. and leaves at 5:30 p.m. and doesn't ask a hotel front desk to send a toothbrush to room 1213 under a fake name. I deleted the Marriott app. I donated the points to a charity because I could not bring myself to redeem them for a vacation I didn't deserve. I texted Liam once more after 90 days because that's when the dust and the denial had settled. I wrote, I am not writing to ask for anything. I am writing to say you were right to leave. If you ever want to talk, I will show up with my full honesty. If you never want to hear from me again, I will respect that. He wrote back, please don't contact me again. There is a version of me 6 months ago who would have taken that as a challenge. The me who signed a separation agreement and gives our dog back on time without a scene said, okay. That's how men win sometimes. Not by smashing you, but by refusing to play the game you keep trying to redeal. If you want to know about consequences at work beyond the paperwork, 2 women I mentored stopped returning my messages because proximity can feel like contagion. One man I used to eat lunch with DM'd me to tell me he'd always had a little crush, and if I wanted something uncomplicated, I could call him. I blocked him because my appetite for complications is finally on a diet. A junior strategist sent me a note that said, you taught me how to negotiate my salary, thank you. I cried because the only thing better than being seen is being seen for something you aren't ashamed of. Mark emailed me from a Gmail account right before Christmas. Thinking of you. I didn't reply. He sent another message 6 weeks later. I miss us. I didn't reply. He sent one more. I'm sorry. I wrote back. I'm sorry too. Then I created a filter that forwards anything from him to a folder called No. I am trying to build muscle memory around choosing my own boundaries before someone else has to erect them for me. Liam started dating again. I know because I saw him at the farmer's market with a woman who had a laugh like a short song. He didn't see me. I watched him choose apples like he was auditioning for a produce commercial. Careful, patient, present. He looked happy in the way that doesn't perform for a camera. I went home and emptied my cabinets of the hotel shampoos I used to keep like trophies. I stopped wearing the watch Mark bought me after we landed the Phoenix account. I took the ring out of the drawer and dropped it at the jeweler for consignment. I used the money to pay for therapy and a vacuum that doesn't die when it sees dog hair. People have asked me if the affair was worth it. That's the wrong math. What do you set the denominator as? The hours of attention? The way his face looked when I made a joke that let him forget the meetings he hated? The hundreds of lies told with calm voices? The way Liam's hands shook when he stacked the sheets he'd washed? Worth isn't the word. It was expensive. I didn't realize the price included the part of me that believed I was a decent partner. I am trying to buy that back, one receipt at a time. Dog food delivered on schedule, rent paid with money earned from clean work, a calendar that says Pilates, when I actually go stretch next to women who are learning how to breathe instead of lie. If you're looking for legal footnotes to make this feel official, here they are. I live in an at-will state. My company had a clear policy about relationships in the reporting chain. We violated it. They hired a third-party investigator, imaged devices, conducted interviews, documented decisions. They owed me nothing but the check they wrote to make the ending neat. They owed Mark nothing but his termination letter and a formal reason attached to it. HR is not a priest, it doesn't absolve you. It manages risk. If you want to keep your job and your secret, don't put your secret in a place whose job is to make sure secrets don't cost the company money. What about the wife? She blocked me, then a month later unblocked me to send one message. Don't ever contact my children. I replied, I won't. She blocked me again. It is an honor to be told exactly how to behave and to obey. What about the kids? They are not characters here. They are people whose father is a person separate from my story. I hope their lives are boring in the parts that need to be. The 200th time we slept together was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a dentist appointment at 8 a.m. And I flossed in a hotel bathroom that didn't belong to me. I remember because I got a Slack from a junior asking for feedback on a deck, and I sent her 3 bullet points and a thumbs up emoji like I hadn't just rearranged the bones of my life again. I remember because the fire alarm went off at 2 p.m. that day at the office, and we stood on the sidewalk with everyone else, and I watched Mark look at his phone like it was telling him who he was allowed to be. I remember because Liam made dinner that night, and I said I'd already eaten and he said, there are leftovers if you want, and I barely heard him over the alarm in my own head I was still ignoring. The last time we spoke, Liam and I, we were splitting the dog's expenses like a ledger. He said, I want him to stay on the same food, change messes with his stomach. I said, okay. He said, I'll take him for the vet visit in April. I said, okay. He said, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I said, I know. He said, do you? And I couldn't answer, because knowing and changing don't always date. Today my calendar has one entry I used to avoid. Dinner alone. Not as punishment. As practice. I sit at our table with a bowl of pasta that clumps less, because I'm learning how to stir with patience. I put my phone in the other room. I eat. I think about the way Liam folded those sheets like he was trying to contain something that couldn't be contained. I think about the way Mark said fix it, and how some people hear that as comfort and some as threat. I think about the small ways I can stop being the person who needs to be told what she already knows. If your brain is screaming, what about forgiveness? I don't have a TED Talk for you. Liam forgave himself by leaving. Mark's wife will forgive herself by building a life that doesn't include his shadow. I am learning to forgive myself by doing things that don't require anyone else to participate. New job, therapy, long walks where I don't narrate my life for an invisible audience, saying no to men who confuse my need for structure with their need for novelty. Forgiveness is not a pronouncement. It's a calendar that doesn't lie. Do I still think about the 200 times? Yes. Memory is a hoarder. It keeps everything, even the parts you don't want. I think about the way I mistook adrenaline for affection, secrecy for intimacy, risk for importance. I think about the look on Liam's face when he saw the stack of receipts he had printed because paper makes things undeniable. I think about how long I tried to make a system gentle that was designed to be sharp. I think about how easily the story could have ended with me insisting I didn't know why he was mad, when the truth is I knew. I just didn't know what to do with the knowing. Here's what I know now. The guy wins when he refuses to negotiate his self-respect. Liam didn't slam doors or launch campaigns. He set a key on the counter and removed himself from a situation that was trying to rebrand his dignity as insecurity. He left quietly and decisively, and the silence after a good man leaves is an indictment louder than any speech. Mark didn't win anything. He lost his job and his title and maybe his marriage, though that's not mine to declare. I didn't win. I lost a fiancé who wanted to do the boring parts forever, which turns out to be the only magic that sustains. There's a world in which I tell you I'm better now, fixed, incorruptible. That world would be a lie. What I am is awake. I can see the trapdoors I built into my days, and the way they creaked long before anyone fell through them. I'm learning to leave rooms with the lights off. I'm learning to schedule Pilates when I actually plan to sweat, and to use the Marriott app only to delete a past reservation that doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm learning to count wins in quiet things. A text I don't send, a door I don't walk through, a story I tell without flattering the part of me that wants to be the most interesting kind of wrong. If you've made it this far waiting for a twist where Liam comes back. He doesn't. He's too busy living the kind of life we planned on a couch we picked out together. I hope it never eats his remote. I hope the dog curls at his feet like certainty. I hope he finds a woman who hears boring forever and understands it's a love song. I hope the only alarm he hears is the one that wakes him to a morning where his coffee grinder is still on the counter, and nothing on the island is weighed down by paper that proves anything except a grocery list. And me? I'm here, telling the truth because lies got me everything I don't have. If you're waiting to feel special, be careful who's handing you the feeling. Make sure it's not someone whose approval is packaged in NDAs and room keys. Make sure it's not a man who gets to decide your performance review. Make sure it's not an older colleague whose laughter makes you feel like a promotion. Make sure it's not the version of yourself who thinks she can build a life out of exceptions. Special is easy. Honest is work. I'm finally doing some.